Dear Venerable Sisters and Brothers, and my friends, as we all know, we have taken this very Girimananda Sutta as the main topic for this series of talks. And yesterday and the previous talk, we tried with the very first perception known as anicca sanya, that is to develop the impermanent nature of the materiality, feelings and perception, the volitional activities and the consciousness. We tried fairly in detail about the materiality. In this case, we have reduced it to the air element, or 1/4 of the materiality of what you call the body, that is air element. And in other words, how the in-breath and out-breath manifest, or how the rising and falling of the abdomen manifest, and that part, mechanical part, we recognize as the materiality. Not only in sitting meditation, even in the walking meditation, how they are changing from the left leg to the right leg, or in-breath to the out-breath, rising mode to the falling mode, or in our day-to-day activities, in each and every posture. So when you are observing specifically and immediately, diligently, vigilantly, continuously, more and more you are to observe its changing nature. As far as materiality you see as an agglomeration or at a distance observation, they camouflage as permanent, auspicious and pleasurable, and assuming like having a core, a pit, or governability. But more and more you go in deep or penetrate into one particular object chronologically, then according to your precision in the aiming and the diligent energy, you can go closely and immediately there you are bound to see its impermanent nature. So more and more you are focused, when and where all the spiritual faculties are aligned and focused, you can see very immediate, close observation, and so much so, you can meditate up to the point the observed object and the noting mind merge each other. So that is what the maximum we can do as far as the materiality is concerned. So when it happens, you feel like plunging into the object or absorb into the object. So this is a kind of going into another paradigm. We can say transcendental, going beyond the materialistic world, and then the mind and the matter merge each other and appear like quite a frictionless way, or rather free of obsessional defilements, and you can experience kind of a concentration. But this is not the final liberation as the Buddha enumerated. And once you go there, you are bound to see immaterial parts, the same experience, that is this absorbed experience or merged experience, or just mere materialistic world sensuous experience. You can explain 3 ways. How do you feel it? How do you perceive it? What did you do it with? So the feeling section, the affectionate part, we call feeling, agglomeration of feelings, Vedana. And how do you feel, apprehend it? That is called perception. sanya, and how do you edit it, how do you manipulate it, how do you change it, that is called volitional part. So when and where someone is relating with this external world, these are the three main channels one get more and more acquainted or familiar, related or relate with the outside world. So therefore, when and where someone is mastering about the materiality and go beyond or go merged with or absorb into materiality, then one's own personality trait, one's own character type, one's own liking and disliking become more prominent than it is mingled with the materiality. In other words, when and where your mind become concentrated, aligned and free of defilements, obsessional kind, then only you can see whether my character is more affectionate type or more towards the communication and the perception type, or I am a manipulator. I am manipulating things and the people and kind of thing. So this is how materiality come into being. Unless otherwise you meditate and be critical upon yourself, you do not know who you are. This is not the main result, but this is a side byproduct. When you are practicing again and again, when and where you master the material world, you are exposing yourself to see your image. Whether I am a kind of a feeling biased person or perception biased person or kind of a person manipulating, creating and producing all the kind of thing, these are the three. So all these three, the feeling section, perception section and the manipulation section, appear like a distraction for your meditation. So therefore, unless otherwise you have this preparedness, correct perspective, you will read them as something negative. You may read them as something obsessing, negative and discouraging kind of. So therefore, more and more you becoming familiar with the materiality and absorb into it, merge with it, you have to understand your personality traits, your likings and disliking become unveiled, and for that you have to go as an objective way to understand what is happening. So one section is the what that we yesterday discussed, our feelings. Our feelings towards the in-breath and out-breath, our feelings towards the rising and falling, feelings toward the left leg and the right leg, feelings toward the day-to-day activities, to the people, to the climate, to the nature. So there's another complete picture or complete channel about the feeling, that is we call the aesthetic part, affectionate part. So that is a part and parcel of each and every individual. For some people, that is very prominent. Yet another kind, they are very discreet, and their perception of things, individual characteristics, and the common characteristic is very sharp. So they are not much biased to the feelings, but perception. How do they perceive, and they believe what they perceive. That is their madness. The early kind is they are very affectionate. The feelings, though they exaggerate it, they become artists, musicians, all the kind of things. So their whole life is for the feelings. The second kind is for the perception, and they, morning to evening, they prove others, this is how I perceive this. This is how I apprehended it. This is how I cognized it. Did you too happen to cognize the same thing? Definitely it is not the case. The other person looking from the different angle, he is not comprehending, he is not apprehending, he is not cognizing in the same way. So, ever debating because of this perception. So therefore, your all mental sicknesses and all physical sicknesses are somewhat related to what did you recognize by the object and how do you communicate that very recognized thing as recognition or reification and fighting with others. So this is happening inside your left lobe of your frontal area of your brain and the right lobe, internal ever declared war. Your left leg did recognize a thing in a different way, very rational way, and the right leg brain is recognized it in the very aesthetic way, so no appeasement. And when you are talking and sharing with your spouse, two different people, of course they are fighting on the same object because of their perception. They perceive from the different viewpoint. Until you prove your perception to the other person, you will never be happy. Throughout, ever you are reiterating, re-articulating, what did you perceive? You never question. My perception, is it true to type? What you see is what I see. Does that seeing thing is existing as it there? Never question. Because you are ever vehemently in fighting to indicate or proving others what did you perceive, and therefore communication is always making such a proliferation. Morning to evening we are talking and no communication taking place. All the time is communication taking place. So therefore the Buddha says, in order to prove that, just on experimental basis, cut off all the communication with the others and try to listen to yourself. And again he is refining as far as the perception is concerned. Don't try to do anything consciously. Don't try to do anything willfully. Don't try to do anything volitionally. And just let the things happen. Involuntary things. And just observe, precisely focused, full with diligent effort and vigilance. Just observe, when and where you observe the same thing, to recurrent thing, how quickly the very thing is changing, and changing not only the shape and the manner, the perception. So fast it is happening, ultimately you can't understand whether it's a concept or reality. So much so, it is happening. That is why we are always changing the object. In order you to see this camouflage, this perverted nature of the perception, you have to focus into the same object very diligently, faithfully, again and again. And not long, before long, you can understand how quickly its perceptions are changing, but it is threatening. That very change of the perception is threatening your egoistic idea. It is threatening your conceit. It is threatening, if it is so quickly changing, how can I love it? How can I hug it? How can I dance with it? It is changing. So therefore your desire is being challenged, your the conceit is challenged and ego is challenged. So therefore what you do is, you are ever changing the object. That is what you call materialism. That is what you call the luxurious usage of the matter. Ultimately you keep on using, you corrupt whole nature, climate, mind and atmosphere, everything, but still you are never happy. You keep on consuming, never allow the same thing to happen again and again. So this is, whenever you are using the same thing again and again, we can say spirituality. Whenever you are ever changing, that is we can see in consumerization and luxury life, and you can understand the polar apart difference as far as the perception is concerned. And even then, even though if you are using that kind of a consuming life, luxurious, princely life, on temporal, experimental basis, temporary, you can just cut off and just observe one thing repeatedly. When you observe, that is what happened to the Prince Siddhartha. He was coming from the princely family, and daily everything is changing. His father was not happy to see that he is discouraged, so everything is changing, never allowed to see anything perished, anything sick, anything old age, anything death, and giving. But of course that life is completely artificial. Soon he got the permission, got his own rights, went out and see how the things are happening. Then he went and took this the life as a hermit, and when you are observing the same thing again and again, he found the other part, how things are changing. So this perception which come in the number 3 under the anicca sanya, and today we took the second perception known as anatta sanya, and the other aspect is this is being prescribed and discourse is delivered to Venerable Girimananda for the healing purposes. So these things have quite a close relationship, interwoven relationship. How far this perception is responsible for one's mental and physical health. So the Buddha on flat rate, point blank, he says, Sabbe Putujjana Ummattaka. All the commoners are eccentric. They never challenge their perception, and anything they have conceived, they consider this as a yardstick. They measure the world with their own yardstick, their own likings and disliking, their own personality traits, their own habits, and they try to prove this is the standard, this is the norm, this is the average, this is the medium mode, and fighting. Even then the Buddha says, whatever may be your walk of life, whatever may be your likings and disliking, whatever may be your personality trait, just leave all the business aside and try to focus on a one single object continuously with a precise aiming and diligent effort, and just see what is happening. How much your mind is objecting the truth to be unfolded. Whenever the truth unfolds, mind makes so much of fuss, so much of entertain of doubts, because there is a repulsivity inside to understand the truth, to understand the unknown. So this is the part of we call misperception. That is because of the present day education as well as the early day education. We are conditioning our mind throughout the life from the age 6 up to the maybe 26, the most precious type of my period of the time. Conditioning in the classroom, it is a rigorous like a imprisonment. All the torturing staff come and torture the adolescent mind and ultimately put into a square shape. This is the perception you must be. You must try to be a doctor. You must try to be a civil servant. Or you must try to be a station master. And then after conditioning, he is looking the world through this cage, and ultimately he becomes Angulimala or mercenary and keep on fighting with the world. Never allow to challenge the perception. And we can understand it make us so crazy, we can't sit in the same position for 5 minutes. We can't shut up our mouth and wait for 5 minutes. We can't observe one particular single object in a consecutive 2-3 thought moments. And we feel that is the creativity and that is the energy That's the vitality. So we go on break dance and go show, pop music and everything, and find we are in the top class of the society. We are the people setting the trends. And Buddha says the singing is nothing but crying. Dancing is nothing but madness. This is the world we are leading. They are the people setting the mode. And we are changing our children also to fit into that perception. So this is the sickness. This is cut across the society. But even then the whole world going for this mad world, crazy world, one person can fix and take this as a challenge to observe the perception, even in the midst of all this go show. So that is what the pragmatism, practical part of the Buddha, wherever it may be. Of course, in order to say it is wherever it may be, you must have a certain amount of background, and once that faculties are developed, you can apply wherever it may be. But to start that, to readjust your mind, the Buddha says, here also, go into a forest, sit under a tree, or go to an empty hut or a solitude place and just contemplate the unvolitional or involuntary action. One particular object, whatever may be, it is conspicuous, repetitively application. That is called anupassana. Anupassana is almost like vipassana. So applying the same thing again like a imprisonment. Our mind hates the same. Therefore we can say, throughout our samsara means that repetitive death and the rebirth, or throughout our life, our basic hobby, our main trait would have been avoiding here now I am. You make so much of hobbies, so much of escapism, just to be eccentric. Never to be here now I am. Now, occasionally the Buddha come into being, and his teaching come into being, disciples come into being. Says, never mind, darling. Why don't you think about and take a chance and be here and now? And when and where, even though you believe Buddha and you are very devoted, even you study the Dhamma, even you see true people and the role model, you find your body is never geared to see same thing again and again. Your verbal activity, inner chatter and outer chatter, never happy to be talk on the same subject. Instead it is multivarious subjects. Mind by itself is a monkey mind, jumping from the one branch to the other without any preconceived idea. It is jumping exactly the way. So knowing these very basic things, if someone is paying attention to the single object as this is the most important thing in my life, so that changing nature, that change in the perception, change in the attitude, the Buddha says the most important, simple, single attitude. That is to say, he is a beginner now to see things as they are, not to see things as I like. So that change we experience individually in our life, not as a common decision. Somewhere there we felt we have to see the truth as it is. So the Buddha is the only person appreciate that very change as the most important change in your life. And then he take one recurrent object, perceivable object and free of charge object, apply mind again and again and again. At the beginning it is so changing, so therefore mind find even difficult to perceive the in-breath and out-breath. Difficult to perceive rising and falling. Difficult to feel left leg and the right leg. So much of problem how to align when the in-breath happen to mind to falls calm and quiet upon the in-breath. It's a miracle. And again, when it go to the out-breath, how often mind falls calm and quiet upon the out-breath? It is not happen, naturally not happening. So therefore, we are using the perception in a very strategically way, and it is very contradictory, it is very ambiguous way. In order to fix the noting mind and the primary object, you use the perception or noting or labeling in a different usage. When the in-breath happens, you notice at in-breath, this is a kind of fixation of the perception. Whenever the out-breath happens, immediately you note it and label. That is called fixing the notion, fixing the perception, so that you can understand this is in-breath, this is out-breath, not a sound, not a thought, not a pain. Like now we are using the perception in order to fix the object as such. But therefore rational people, those who are very analytical, this is the Buddha main object, main thing is to disprove the perception, to say it is no self, it's changing. If it is so, why this noting business? Why this using this very perception in order to fix the object? So therefore, I can't understand theoretically why this noting, why this is labeling of the object. This is kind of a fixation, and using the perception is in a positive way. So this is a very good, very observed objection someone has to understand. So last time when I go to Dhammajiva also, generally I indicated you sit, you note here, now I am sitting. So bring the attention to the present moment. Let the mind to be at home, be in the sitting posture. So one gentleman came and asked, Bhante, here now I am. When you are telling I am, aren't you fixing self? Are you accepting the self? Is this the teaching of the Buddha? So then I told, yes, at the beginning when you are fixing that here now I am, you are using the perception in order to have a fixation. Yes, it is happening. He raised the question, but he never continues. So in order to give a rhetoric answer, one Westerner told, before becoming nobody, you have to be somebody. Therefore, you have to understand who am I first. Then only you are disproving it. To understand who am I fix what you call my body, what you call my feelings, my perception, and you delimit it from the external thing. Exactly the way, whenever you wish to see changing nature of the in-breath, first you have to fix it. You have to delimit it from the out-breath. You have to delimit it from the sound, thought, pain. So therefore you use the perception there in a constructive way. You note it, in-breath as in-breath, out-breath as out-breath. So therefore the later commentators, when they are defining the mental factor known as sati or mindfulness, it says tira sanya padatthana. Mindfulness is based upon, or approximate factor for the mindfulness to arise is to have a fixed perception. Whenever in-breath happens, you have to note as in-breath. Whenever out-breath happens, you have to fix it as out-breath. Likewise, when you keep on noting in-out or in-breath, out-breath, then only mindfulness sets into or come into being, and that very mindfulness later disprove the very thing. That disprove there is no in-breath, there is no out-breath, at least at the perception level. So this change of the attitude, hardly possible to comprehend. Think, how can within a few seconds, maybe within 1 hour, Early part you are fixing the perception, and the latter part you under your very nose that very thing dissolves off, very thing evolve, very thing metamorphosis, and ultimately you can see under your very nose what you fixed are gone, dissolved. The perception is disappearing. This is the evolution. This is the evolution taking place in Vipassana procedure, very difficult to rationally or linear way to understand unless otherwise you are a practical person. So therefore you can't write thesis upon Vipassana. Never. You can write so much of theories and theses upon Samatha, but Vipassana self-contradictory. You fix it first and you disprove it. That is to say, you recognize as somebody and ultimately you prove that is nobody. So this is a very ambiguous point, but practicing person, if he is really, if it's a pragmatic person, easily you can understand. First you note in-breath, in-breath, out-breath, and then where you fix the be with the object face to face, you are developing kind of a mindfulness, kind of a awareness. You can predict. The next in-breath also I can see without much of a hesitation. Next out-breath also I can see. Your confidence develop. Object is appear like face to face with. You are not much worried about the sounds, pain and thought. When that happens, with respect, with the help of the in-breath and out-breath, you are fixing your mindfulness. Now you are using the very mindfulness to have the continuous observation of the very object in-breath and out-breath. Then what happens is that very gross in-breath, if everything aligned, becomes subtle and subtlest. Out-breath also, long one becomes short and short one becomes subtlest, and then that very perception slowly becoming, it is dissolved off. It is rectified and become invalid. Ultimately you come to a point, you can't discriminate this whether it is in-breath or out-breath. In technically it says, your common characteristics are dissolving and, individual characteristics are dissolving and the common characters are going to come, and at that moment your mind, your rational mind has to undergo big change towards the attitudes, towards the perception. This is the most important part in the interview. If you are meditating and reporting, exactly, if you try to explain exactly what is happening, you may find your presentation, your interview reports is quite irrational. At the beginning you see this is in-breath, this is out-breath very clearly, delimited way, discrete way, and while you are fixing again and again, their individual characteristics are merging each other. You can see in-breath, out-breath happens, you can't discriminate it, but the mindfulness is intact. If you are not challenging it, if you are ready to accept it, if you keep on continuing, ultimately you may find there is as if no in-breath and out-breath, but the mindfulness is steadfast. That means earlier you developed the mindfulness with the help of an object. Now object is slowly disappearing. Now you develop kind of a mindfulness without an object, without a sign, without external thing, and ultimately you appear, the mindfulness or concentration is a signless kind. So this is the part you never find in any religion, any scientific world, nowhere, and that is the point. Your worldly life with the spiritual life, your conventional truth to the absolute truth is changing. So reporting of that, if you can do precisely, the Maha system, they say 50% of meditation is finished. Exactly, you know, you observe what is happening without putting your interpretation, you just report. And if the report is happening in a gradual way, any teacher can understand not only you are see things as they are, you still further report in a precise way. That means your internal organization is, your internal faculties are now aligned. Till that, you report what you expect to happen, what should happen. You never report what is happening. That is what you call the perverted nature of the perception. So, in order to achieve it, you must be so humble. You have to develop so much of the beginner's mind. You must be a lifelong learner. Otherwise, when and where your fixed perception going to take upper hand, whatever you are reporting is something questionable. All the meditation masters, they know it. You are not a conscious liar. You have nothing to lie, but this is the way your mind is working. It is something to be compassionate and sympathetic. Definitely you can remember how I developed this kind of short to the point the reporting. It is a miracle. It is a miracle. And then onward you can see, you can exactly tell the message to the person with the shortest amount of words. And the communication become telepathic. No much of words necessary. Silence retreat, silent sermons are happening. So come up to that level, only happening in a particular specific dimension. Here, now, I am. Whenever you are concerned about the second person, you are completely mad world. Whenever you are concerned about the past and the future, you are completely eccentric. Whenever you are think about other places, eccentric. So, rational thinker says, oh Bhante, how can we live throughout the life? Here now I am. This is the way the crazy mind is calculating. This is the way crazy mind is projecting. Buddha never asks you to live the whole life here now. He says, live at least one thought moment and live up to it. Reporting in the present way is a complete thunderbolt. It's a complete opposite of your rational mind with respect to the perception. So therefore, if you can go into the present moment, appreciate this is at the most precious moment in your life, and that is to be galvanized by reporting to another person exactly what you experience, then the communication takes place. Even though the Buddha going to give a sermon for thousands and other people, only one or two get hooked, get connected, get communicated, because others are just conventionally listening. And the Buddha says it is like a pouring water into a pot upside down. Nothing going. It is not by your will, it is not by your wish, it is not by your reading, it is not by the teacher's grace, nothing. It is only happened by trial and error. It is only happened by trial and error, and then only you can understand our mind perceives only the sexual things. Our mind perceives only the sensual thing. Never the nibbana, never the peace of mind, never the middle path, never the equanimity. When and where mind is coming to the middle path or equanimity, it gets completely upset. It says, I don't know what is happening. I don't know whether I am sleeping. I don't know whether I am awake. I don't know where I am. I don't know whether I am sitting or standing. I have no memory. This is a very clear sign something is happening, but it is nothing to get frightened. It is nothing to get alarmed. You have to go prepared for this new thing, unknown thing, and novelty, and that is what you call yonso manasikara. That is what you call the radical reflection. We are so conventional, we are so lenient, we are so theoretician, therefore our mind never jump into that unknown, never jump into that freedom, never jump into that equanimity. So therefore you have to each and every moment understand when and where mind is rational, it is kind of a imitation. That imitation is a limitation. Imitation is a limitation. So you have to just be. You have to be just open to the situation. So much so you have to understand the perversions of the perception. And then I will show you, you can be a president of the country without much of a problem. Any area, any place you can go and interpret terms, because all the others are eccentric. Whatever you are going to say, it has the short and sweet meaning, and easily you can verify it. Till that, all the other things are called prapancha or mental proliferation. It is gossiping. Amount to be gossiping. So therefore, more and more you are gossiping, you are cut off from the Dhamma or teaching of the Buddha. So you have to first and foremost, as well as the verbal side is concerned, observe the normal silence and listen to your inner chatter, and even then don't arrive at the inference or conclusion or decision or reaction. Just have repetitive application, repetitive arising of the same. Observe as a neutral observer, observe as a distance observer. Then you find simple, under your very nose, no tension, no frustration, no burning, no torturing. You just see as things they are. Even without reporting to someone. Let it happen again and again, then you can understand what is the limitation and what is the imitation. And more you dissolve into these things as they are. Perception has no role. Perception is always fixing labels, signs, and cognizing for the later recognition. But when and where the meditation is leading to the middle path, you almost like signless. You feel kind of a emptiness, you feel kind of a vastness, you feel kind of a experience. It is solid experience, but no words to explain. So therefore Buddha says, anywhere you attribute it to a word, that is eccentric. Whenever you put a label or name to anything, that is filthy. That is defiled. Nothing in the world, the Buddha says, not defiled by a name. But when you are reaching to the middle path and going there, we also call even the most refined form as Nibbana, Nirvana, liberation, and all the kind of thing. Till you go up to that, they are just words. When you are practicing, the word meaning ever changing, so therefore don't worry about this deep, long calculation. Just observe the in-breath and out-breath. Just observe the rising and falling if you take this as the primary object. And don't change the object. If you are changing object, you are making the situation more complicated. Select the most conspicuous. And while walking, just understand to be simply on this walking situation and let the mind to compare it chronologically. It is nothing you have to worry about that is happening, and then report it and accept it as it is, and there you can see how quickly, how fast the materiality is changing, feelings are changing accordingly, how much the perception is changing. Any perception you report, you comprehend, you reify is sensual, is sexual. So Sigmund Freud reduced the sexual desire, the Buddha made it sensual desire, and our whole life is slavery to this sensual world and the sexual world. But even then the Buddha says, whenever you learn the perception and when you go there, Buddha says our whole life is nothing to sacrifice for this sensual and sexual business. There's a huge transcendental part, huge spiritual part. When you go there, you find no friction. You find that is as a walkover, no fighting with others, and there you don't find any much of candidates also there, but this sphere, passing beyond this materiality, only possible for human beings. No other can do it, but even then human beings are so engaged in sensual and sexual thing, very difficult even to communicate and tell and teach the Dhamma and leave aside everything. Even if you made up your mind, see how much traps, how much pitfalls you have to go through, and for that your trial and error is the main thing. You have to keep on doing, observe the same thing repetitively. It is called anupassana or vipassana, and that is the worst thing our mind expects. So always changing colors, changing shapes, changing sounds, changing tastes, changing smells, changing other tactile sensation, and changing our pet ideas. This is what we were doing. So that is what you call the burning the candle from both the ends. Instead, take a little time of your multitasking life, busy life, and observe the same thing again and again. You see how much the mind is reacting. That mind reaction we call boredom. The mind reaction we call frustration. Wild reaction we call monotony. But whenever you are advancing, they are blessings in disguise. But you never let the boredom to take you for a ride. Don't let the monotony to take you for a ride. Be prepared. Now I am earned it, so I have to be awakened into this boredom, awakened into this frustration. And that is the answer for mental health. That is what we do in free association. That is what we do in counseling. Now you have nothing to pay. Mindfulness is your counselor. You have a free association with the now mindfulness. That is called evenly suspended attention, suspended decision, continuity of the observation. When it is happening, your perception come into kind of a alignment, and you find then and there frustration is slowly reducing. And the Buddha mentioned sanya vimuttassana santiganta. If you know what you are talking and you know the purpose of it, when you are communicating, there is no misunderstanding happen. Whenever you have perverted idea, if you have a agenda behind what you are talking about, anything you are talking is never communicated. It's complicated. So therefore, idea must be free of agenda, free of any manipulation. You see things as they are, you report things as they are. No problem. So any miscommunication we had because we had a dirty agenda behind, related to the sensuality and the sexuality, so then ultimately it is becoming problematic. But even then, when and where you start direct communication with your mind, with your mindfulness and with your colleagues, you can understand the least friction it happens. So therefore, in learning in the early part of your meditation as a adhikammika vipassaka or beginner's mind, you fix the perception. This is in-breath, this is out-breath, this is rising, this is falling like. That fixation is to delimit it from the others and keep on practicing it the same. Ultimately, very thing you isolated, delimited, you find it's losing its identity, losing its perception, and very difficult for a rational mind to understand it. But that is the thing rejuvenating you. It is ever refreshing you, and no disease can rest. No mental disease can rest. The Buddha says this is as passaddhi, and settling down. Everything calm down and settle down. Even you have a pain, maybe due to any malic or any imbalance of your elements, you never exaggerate it. You understand the pain as pain. You know body is now in healing process. The pain is a symptom of a healing process. But instead, if you are going to suppress it with anesthesia or any kind of thing, body will give up all the healing and let everything go to the medicine. But instead, if you give the idea, look at the pain, not only the pleasure, give an equal weight to the pain and the pleasure and observe. Don't perceive this is auspicious, this is unauspicious, this is good, this is bad. Without that, if you observe, the pain it's a mechanical, the chemical aspect. And whatever you accepted so far, this is good, this is bad, this is along the Dhamma, this is not along the Dhamma, this is just, this is unjust. You have to understand this judgmental thing happened through the perception, and you taken into grant without questioning it. So therefore you are in a rut. You never go radical. So the Buddha is the first and foremost master. Always use the radical reflection. Understand your base, but don't let it limit into that. Always have a radical reflection. So your mind is like a child brain, ever ready. It is a neurobics, many neural connections any time can take place. You never think in a rut. Always brainstorming. That brainstorming is usually effectively happening in the adolescence from the 14th to 24th. So when and the 14th to 24th, you can understand the vigor in your body, healing and curing capacity is there. When in the meditation, when it come back to this vigor, this neurobics, it can take care about the medical and mental and physical health. So therefore, when and where someone is ready to experiment with this perception, I would say he become inhuman. He cannot be a rational person. He cannot be a lenient person. He must be ready like an adolescent, ready for anything, even the breaking neck, ready to take the challenge. This is how the monkhood is. Becoming a monk is not a kind of put the vegetable into the deep freezer and lock it and keep it in there in the deep freeze manner. The monkhood is complete open challenge. Always you are ready to pursue new way, neurobics, and when it is happening only you can just little comprehend who the Buddha is. What is the Dhamma is. Otherwise we have a few formulas in our mind. We always fit our life into that formula. It is a rigorous imprisonment. But when you observe in the perception, and unlucky enough, in the Theravada tradition, we have lost a chunks of the juicy teaching of the Buddha with respect to perception. That is during the interpretation time, the commentators' time, we underwent a lot of foreign invading, we underwent a lot of natural disasters, droughts and kind of thing. These big chunks, we lost it. Lucky enough, some of them are preserved in the Mahayana tradition. It is preserved in the Sanskrit language. So recently, there were the bhikkhus, they go in and explore into this Mahayana area about the Papancha and the Sanya, and they found our interpreters are so develop a kind of a phobia to interpret it in a radical way. Because we have developed the ism, Buddhism, and that very bloody thing became a limitation for the new interpretation. But good, it is partly because of the Western thinking. And Sri Lanka also underwent some Western invasion. And there we people also learn little English and Sanskrit and they go in search of. And there are now perspectives are broadening, but traditional Theravada people think that is not the original teaching of the Buddha. Original teaching of the Buddha is more confined to the materiality and little bit of Vedana, no much of literature we have, no much of interpretation we have on the Sanya and Sankhara. Sankhara is completely misunderstood, misinterpreted. That is because we are fixing the whole teaching into the ism. Defreezing. Never allow it to be bursting, brainstorming. But I was so lucky as a person, came into the earth, this birth, in such a good time. Now Dhamma is proliferating. We can take any channel, we can understand in a very radical way, and then you find that all the juicy, sappy part not only limited to the Theravada. Theravada is a very good beginning, very good foundation, and openness is there, unless otherwise you become not, you careful not to become a Buddhist. I mean Buddhism, sorry. If you are open to the Dhamma, openness is there. But of course, if you wish, you can get nailed into the cross, crucified. But if you can keep it open, the sanya is the very juicy area, very sappy area, but our square mind, our mind in the rut, our linear thinking, and our conservative way of preserving myself, and conservative way of our conceit, and going to get the lion's share and the big chunk in our sensuous and sexual thing, is paralyzing me. But if you are keeping the trust upon mindfulness, you do not know the way how you evolve. So therefore, whether you like it or not, whether you know the formulas or not, whether it is expected or not, as far as you trust upon the mindfulness, the choiceless awareness, the openness, is such a potential thing. You never limited according to your likings and dislikings. You understand the total potential or possibilities in the given moment. Each and every moment is enormous possibility. Unless otherwise you have a preconceived idea and infesting the moment to come. When and where you have the perception understood, no problem. You are fresh to the next moment. That means you are healthy to the next moment. You are adolescent to the next moment. So the life is more greener. Life is more rejuvenated, juvenile, and energy, different ways of thinking. And then you understand the living Dhamma. That is because your early mistakes to the mindfulness, so therefore trust upon the mindfulness, and when it is taken you through the perception, you feel it, the vibration and the openness, and I hope within this retreat you all can experience it, and later you have to think about how to maximize it or how to generalize it. That is individual responsibility, and hope today talk also helpful for each and everyone to think afresh, think new, and see the perception as impermanent as well as non-self characteristic. So tomorrow also we will go further, and thank you very much for listening. With that remark, I am going to stop the today's talk.